expansion was discussed both at a committee level and at the board, and ultimately the league office was tasked by our board with doing an in-depth analysis.
When a single player completely reshapes an entire sports league overnight, the entire establishment is forced to adapt or burn down. And right now, professional women's basketball is undergoing a massive shift that nobody saw coming. For months, fans watched in total disbelief as rookie prodigy Caitlin Clark was subjected to a continuous barrage of non-basketball hits, hard shoves, and off-ball physical contact that looked more like mixed martial arts than elite basketball. But behind the closed doors of league headquarters, corporate patience finally ran out when the money, the television ratings, and the future of women's athletics were placed directly on the chopping block. Adam Silver and the upper management of professional basketball realized that allowing their biggest draw to be continuously targeted wasn't just bad optics. It was a multi-million-dollar financial risk that could destroy years of economic momentum. The quiet tolerance for targeted hostility is officially over, and the executive directives coming down from the top are changing the way the sport is officiated and governed forever. To truly understand how we reached this boiling point, you have to look back at the chaos that unfolded during the opening months of Clark's rookie campaign. Coming out of Iowa, as the greatest scorer in college basketball history, Clark entered the professional ranks with an unprecedented level of hype, securing an 8-year, $28 million deal with Nike and drawing millions of brand new eyes to the sport. But instead of being welcomed into the fraternity of elite athletes, she walked into a locker room culture that seemed determined to break her spirit on the hardwood. Game after game, viewers watched as defenders grabbed, shoved, and clotheslined the young superstar, while referees stood by, letting play continue as if target painting was just part of the veteran initiation ritual. The boiling point came when sky guard Chennedy Carter blindsided Clark with a cheap shot off the ball before an inbound play, leaving Clark sprawling on the floor. What was initially called a common foul was later upgraded by the league office to a flagrant one, but the damage was already done in the court of public opinion. Fans, sports analysts, and major corporate sponsors were absolutely furious, demanding to know why the league was allowing its golden ticket to be physically targeted without consequence. But that brutal moment was only the spark that lit an even larger executive firestorm behind closed doors. For weeks, the debate raged across national sports networks, as former players and television pundits insisted that the brutal treatment was simply tough, old-school basketball, while millions of casual fans called out what appeared to be blatant jealousy. Off-ball contact that would instantly trigger a whistle in the NBA was routinely ignored when Clark was navigating through screens, with defenders taking free shots at her ribs and hips, while the official's whistle stayed silent. The narrative rapidly shifted from simple rookie hazing to an orchestrated environment where players felt comfortable taking non-basketball hits because they knew the officiating crew wouldn't hold them accountable. Social media erupted after every game, highlighting clips of Clark being knocked down while trying to set screens, grabbed around the neck while driving into the lane, and bumped long after the whistle had blown. The financial hypocrisy was stark. While the league was eager to post Clark's highlight reels across all their social platforms to drive digital engagement, they seemed completely unwilling to protect her on the floor. Sponsors began asking uncomfortable questions behind closed doors, wondering if their multi-million-dollar investments were safe when the face of the movement was one bad hit away from a season-ending injury. And what happened next behind those executive glass doors would change the balance of power inside the front office forever. The officiating failure was not just a case of missed calls. It revealed a deep-seated structural flaw in how the league handled fast-paced, high-profile modern superstars. For decades, the Wnba prided itself on being a rugged, defensively physical league where points were earned through heavy grinding in the paint. However, The game transformed overnight into a fast-paced, high-volume perimeter shooting spectacle, driven largely by Clark's unprecedented logo-range shot creation and passing vision. The legacy referee crews were simply ill-equipped to manage defenses that were using illegal hand-checking, hip-checking, and intentional trailing contact to disrupt Clark's movement off the ball. Defenders realized early in the season that if they hit Clark before she received the pass, officials were far less likely to call a foul than if they contested her shot directly. This loophole in officiating allowed opposing teams to physically wear down the rookie, turning every possession into a chaotic struggle where non-basketball contact went unpunished. As clip after clip went viral, showing uncalled intentional trips and arm wraps, fan outrage reached critical mass, forcing corporate leadership to intervene directly in referee management. The simple financial reality that many casual fans forget is that the NBA owns a massive nearly 60% stake in the WNBA, meaning Adam Silver is not just a distant observer. He is the ultimate authority over the economic health of the product. When Silver looks at the television ratings, he doesn't just see a basketball game. He sees a booming commercial enterprise where Caitlin Clark is single-handedly pulling in historic viewership that rivals broadcast networks and outpaces long-standing men's sports programs. Games featuring the Indiana Fever consistently sold out NBA-sized arenas, shattered cable viewership records, and drove unprecedented merchandise sales that funded long-overdue league upgrades, including a full-season charter flight program costing tens of millions of dollars. The Wnba was suddenly sitting on a gold mine, negotiating a historic $2.2 billion media rights deal that would secure the league's financial future for the next decade. If Clark were to sustain a major injury as a direct result of an unregulated cheap shot or a malicious off-ball hit, that entire multi-billion-dollar ecosystem would collapse overnight like a house of cards. Silver knew that the soft, hands-off leadership approach couldn't continue while veteran rivalries threatened the league's grandest economic opportunity. Reports began to circulate that emergency high-level meetings were held between Adam Silver, Wnba Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, and senior referee directors to fix the officiating breakdown immediately. The message from the very top was direct, uncompromising, and clear. The era of allowing non-basketball contact under the guise of welcome to the league physicality was officially over. League directives were dispatched directly to referees across the country, outlining strict new guidelines regarding off-ball fouls, body checks, and non-basketball contact against ball handlers. Referees were instructed to utilize video replay much more aggressively, upgrading standard fouls to flagrants whenever contact was deemed unnecessary or excessive, particularly away from the main play. The mandate specifically targeted the dangerous trend of defenders using their shoulders, hips, and arms to deliver hits to players moving through screen actions, a tactic that had been used continuously to wear down Clark throughout the early months of the schedule. Furthermore, officiating crews were told that their post-game performance evaluations would now heavily weigh their ability to control game flow and eliminate dangerous non-basketball contact before it spiraled out of control. To ensure the new rules were enforced without hesitation, the league implemented an unprecedented level of official review and accountability that had never been seen in women's professional sports. Games were assigned dedicated officiating observers tasked with tracking off-ball contact in real time, feeding video evidence directly to the replay center to ensure no non-basketball hit went unpenalized. Players who built their defensive reputations on borderline physical tactics quickly found themselves in foul trouble early in the first quarter, forcing coaches to alter their game plans entirely. The subtle shoves, the deliberate leg trips, and the dangerous closing out on three-point shooters were met with swift whistles, technical fouls, and immediate broadcast reviews. This dramatic shift completely changed the dynamic on the court, giving creative playmakers the space they needed to operate without fearing an unpunished physical strike every time they released the ball. The immediate result was a soaring offensive output across the entire league. Higher scoring games, faster pacing, and an even more thrilling spectacle for the millions of viewers tuning in every single night. This executive intervention mirrors famous historical moments in professional sports, where leagues were forced to rewrite their rulebooks to protect generational assets and preserve entertainment value. Back in the late 1980s and early 90s, the NBA had to systematically dismantle the infamous Detroit Pistons bad boys era by outlawing violent hand-checking and hard illegal fouls that targeted Michael Jordan. Years later, the NBA adjusted freedom of movement rules to protect shooters like Steph Curry, who were constantly being grabbed, held, and shoved off the ball by physical defenders attempting to suppress his generational perimeter scoring. Just as the NBA realized that fans paid to see Michael Jordan soar through the air and Steph Curry drain 50-foot shots, Adam Silver recognized that global audiences tune in to watch Caitlin Clark orchestrate masterclass offensive plays, not get tackled on inbound passes. By prioritizing skill, speed, and player safety over antiquated violence, the league sent a loud signal that modern athleticism and marketability will always trump legacy enforcement. When news of the officiating directive leaked, it ignited a massive firestorm among veteran players and head coaches who felt the league was changing its rules to pamper a single rookie. High-profile figures and legendary players like Sheryl Swoopes and Diana Taurasi had spent months emphasizing that Clark would need to adapt to the league's legendary physical play, insisting that no special treatment should ever be handed out. When referees began calling games tighter, handing out technical fouls and upgrading hard fouls on players like Angel Reese and Carter, critics accused the league office of soft protecting Clark to safeguard corporate revenue. Locker room frustration mounted as players claimed that legal defensive plays were now being penalized simply because of who was on the receiving end of the contact. Press conferences became battlefield environments, with veteran players tiptoe phrasing around questions about officiating, clearly afraid of being fined by a league office that was now monitoring every statement with an iron fist. The narrative turned into a full-scale culture war between the old guard, who had fought in obscurity for decades through physical, gritty play, and the modern era brought in by Clark's explosive popularity. Yet despite the veteran outcry, the league office refused to back down, recognizing that the long-term survival of the sport depended entirely on modernization. The financial restructuring extended far beyond game officiating, triggering a massive operational overhaul across all franchise logistics and security protocols. Before Clark's arrival, Wnba teams routinely flew on standard commercial airlines, dealing with public terminal delays, chaotic airport crowds, and cramped seating conditions that were severely out of step with professional athletics. However, as Clark's fame exploded, public airport terminals became safety hazards, with mobbing crowds and aggressive fans surrounding the team, creating unacceptable security risks. Under immense pressure from sponsors, player unions, and executive advisors, the league was forced to accelerate plans for a full-season, league-wide charter flight program, investing tens of millions of dollars into premium travel infrastructure. In addition, arena security protocols were vastly expanded, with private venue detail and heightened police presence assigned to every single game to manage the unprecedented crowds. This travel revolution forever elevated the operational standard for female athletes, showing that protecting high-value talent requires elite off-court logistics just as much as strict on-court refereeing. Beyond logistics, the tactical evolution on the floor was immediate, as head coaches had to rewrite their defensive blueprints to cope with the new officiating reality. In the past, defensive coordinators relied on throwing physical enforcers at top perimeter stars, using aggressive bump-and-run coverage to disrupt offensive timing off the ball. Under the strict new officiating guidelines, defenders could no longer lean, grab, or deliver subtle body checks without immediately accumulating personal fouls. Head coaches were forced to abandon crude physical tactics and instead deploy complex perimeter schemes, deep zone coverages, and disciplined blitzes to contain Clark's elite offensive arsenal. This change unexpectedly elevated the overall tactical quality of the sport, forcing players to rely on footwork, lateral speed, and defensive discipline, rather than brute force. Young players across the league benefited from the increased freedom of movement, leading to an explosion of individual skill displays and offensive fireworks that captivated millions of new television viewers. The media firestorm surrounding these changes generated an unprecedented feedback loop, where every controversial whistle was dissected by sports talk shows, viral internet breakdown channels, and social media influencers. For the first time in history, Wnba refereeing became a primary talking point on major sports networks, drawing continuous national attention that kept the league at the very top of daily sports news cycles. Viral breakdown videos highlighted precise officiating calls, analyzing high-definition angles of off-ball fouls and contrasting them with historic physical plays from previous seasons. This non-stop media scrutiny held referees accountable to a degree never seen before, making it virtually impossible for officials to revert to their old habits of letting off-ball violence slide. The public discourse converted casual interest into intense emotional investment, driving television ratings even higher as fans tuned in to see how teams would adapt to the new standard of protection. As the economic numbers continued to surge, team owners across the league realized that the rising tide was lifting every single franchise boat, softening initial locker room resentment. Franchises that had operated at financial losses for years were suddenly selling out arena seats at record ticket prices, generating millions in game day merchandise, food, and corporate suite sales. Team valuations skyrocketed, attracting billionaire investors eager to buy into expansion franchises in major international markets. Player salaries, performance bonuses, and end-of-year revenue shares began to jump significantly, directly tied to the commercial explosion spearheaded by Clark's unprecedented drawing power. Veterans who had initially grumbled about special treatment began to recognize that the protection enforced by Adam Silver and the league office was directly filling their own bank accounts and securing their long-term post-career benefits. The economic reality bridged the gap between legacy tradition and corporate evolution, showing that protecting star power creates sustainable wealth for every single athlete in the union. The long-term implications of this monumental shift extend far beyond Caitlin Clark's individual career, permanently reshaping the operational philosophy of women's professional sports globally. By establishing zero tolerance for targeted physical hostility, the league proved that player health, marketability, and entertainment product quality take absolute priority over antiquated hazing traditions. Future rookie classes entering the Wnba will step onto hardwood courts